Thank you, Madam Chair. This is one of my favorite topics. I find it extremely fascinating. Mr. Crowder, at IBM, I know that there's different types of quantum, like ways in which you can build a quantum computer. There's like photonic. What is IBM doing?
We're using something called superconducting qubits, and there are a lot of ways you can hold a quantum state and build a quantum computer. But at the end of the day, from our perspective, you're trying to build a computer, and how it works is less important than how quickly it can compute stuff. And that's why we chose the approach that we chose, because we think it's the right balance of allowing us to build really large systems in the future, but also the underlying operation is pretty fast, so it's really good as a computer as opposed to just a research project.
So you're measuring the state of what particle?
It is basically some people call it like an artificial atom. It's basically just something that resonates at a certain frequency and holds a quantum state. So it's either in the 0 state or in the 1 state or in a superposition of the 0 state and the 1 state, which is what makes it quantum. And there's a lot of ways you can build those quantum states. You can use individual ions, you can use photonics, you can do it the way that we do it. There's lots of different ways that you can do it.
Okay. And then whenever you're doing that, there's different algorithms that perform very well, given the fact that you're basically dealing in probability, right?
Yeah, it's actually this bizarre mix of probability and precise. So it's actually, when you're in a quantum state, you're in a very precise, exact quantum state, but it appears probabilistic because when you measure it, it either collapses to a 0 or a 1 based on that precise state. So it's one of those head-hurting things about quantum computing. But yes, so the trick is to create these algorithms that use all this compute power in a way that's useful, in a way that's efficient. And that's where I would argue we need to put more research, because that's really where the rubber hits the road in terms of taking quantum computers and making them useful for US government missions and for industry.
Okay. Ms. Rubenstein, in healthcare, how can the benefits of the way in which quantum computers work and their complexity and their performance, how would that benefit the healthcare industry?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of different drugs that we create that will bind to different proteins in different ways. And so fundamentally what people want to understand is which drugs will bind in different ways to proteins, and how can we make those new drugs that can be the therapeutics of tomorrow. And so classically, if we use regular computers, it can be quite hard to figure out how that binding occurs. I actually use some of the biggest supercomputers in the world in order to figure out these kinds of things accurately. Quantum computers, in principle, will be able to do that very rapidly, so exponentially faster and extremely accurately. And so that will let us predict the drugs of the future much, much faster than we are today.
Okay. And then I had some questions. Mr. Mandich, what are the key differentiators allowing American firms to lead globally on this topic? What's benefiting us?
Well, we have a vibrant, startup community.
Private sector community?
Private sector community that's benefited from all this research that came before it.
And that's one of my biggest questions as well. Is like we have big players like IBM. We have Google doing Willow, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And but then I saw that there's another company called
PsiQuantum.
PsiQuantum. That's a brand new startup?
They're almost 10 years old. They're photonic computing. Yeah.
Okay, but they're new, relatively speaking, compared to...
these companies didn't exist a decade ago.
And so you see this as an opportunity for some new startups to kind of venture into this market.
Yeah, but no startup can enter this business at all without all this fundamental research. There's nobody that would have studied, Microsoft just released the Majorana 1, which is a topological qubit. There's 6 or 7 different technologies that went into making that put them on third base to even start building that process. And that came out of Oak Ridge, Los Alamos National Lab, NIST, and other places like that. They could never have done that without that foundational piece.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.